I deal with lots of kids from different financial backgrounds, different ethnic and racial backgrounds, and I always see this replicate itself under the microscope. So I'm going to start off by thanking everyone who invited me here today. I'm going to talk about something totally different than what's been talked about this morning. There we go, it works. So the title of my talk is Intersectional Medicine, the efficacy of low-dose THCA on autism spectrum and related and coexisting conditions. This is our lab, ThePotLab, and Smart Farm Research Group are supporters of our nonprofit. So let's get started. So I wanted to do this talk and talk about myself, and I hope that relates to maybe your kids or your friends or other people you know. Because I have a complex background that's very intersectional. And I know that's a buzzword, but I'm using it as a totally different thing today and really defining what it means, intersectionality means. So I was born a very cute little girl baby. And when I was born with the umbilical cord around my neck, resulting in mild cerebral palsy. And luckily, the doctors gave my mom oxygen. It could have been a lot worse. As a little girl, they put me in these cute little dresses that I hated. And it wasn't long before I was dressing the way I wanted to dress. And this is actually a picture literally 2 weeks before someone attempted to burn a cross on my parents' lawn. So when people talk about racism being over with, I'm kind of confounded because in the 1980s, now I'm showing my age, this actually happened, and it wasn't for my dad, who says an armed society is a peaceful society. That probably would have actually happened in our front lawn, and I was so little. And I remember thinking to myself, why is that? And I was so little, like 4 or 5 years old, but I could read. I wasn't very coordinated as far as sports and things, but I really liked to read. And my first book was a Martin Luther King book. And my first protest was my sister for not letting me in her room. So I was very high functioning, as people say, but I was also applying principles in the wrong place, probably. So my parents kind of let me pick my own clothes. As you can see, I love my jeans and my little Smurf shirts and Star Wars and He-Man. And I played with My Little Pony and stuff like that too, but it like all mixed together, like He-Man would ride on the My Little Pony. Very gender indifferent. As I grew up, I became a young woman. I still wore, of course, female bathing suits. I even modeled a bit. This is me on set for Roxy. I did a lot of skimboarding, a lot of physical activity because of my disability as far as coordination. And I became a skimboarder in California. So I'm from LA, and skimboarding is so much fun, so try it if you haven't. Just don't kill yourself. So then I got into dancing. I know there's lots of kids on the spectrum that really get into dance and become obsessive with it. And so my parents had another intersection that they weren't really well off. So gymnastic lessons, unless I had a scholarship, were out of the question. So soon I started breakdancing, and that got me through college and paid for my school. And here's me again. So at this intersection, I was in a dance field with lots of guys, and all my friends were male. And so it was another intersection of being non-neurotypical female. I had a different experience in life. It was very gender neutral. I didn't really do girl things. But I did lots of things, and I traveled, and I had fun with my friends. But it was just a little bit different. So in college, I became very aware of what finances were, and I loved economics because it gave me insight into things that hold people back that shouldn't. Things like healthcare expenses and shelter and food, things that you would think were human rights. So this is me with my corporate America flag upside down at Occupy Wall Street. And I became aware of how much those influence places like the FDA, USDA, because I've actually published with the FDA and USDA 3 times. I became aware of the inner workings of society and became politically engaged more with anarchism, which is more than a small government. It's no government, right? And I became increasingly interested in liberation. So, oh, I'm already there. I got through college on Department of Defense funds, but I turned down going to the military. And I eventually worked my butt off. I got into Johns Hopkins Medical School in 2007. And I worked for a internationally known woman named Rajni Rao, who changed my life and showed me that women of color can be very successful and very independent women who do their own science and achieve tons of notoriety from it. And she was just an amazing person, definitely a second mom. And she had lots of people in the spectrum in her lab, and we think she's kind of on the spectrum too. She's amazing, really smart woman, tons of grants. So while I was in grad school, all these intersections for me came together. I stopped smoking cannabis. I thought that I would be better in school, but no, that's not what happened. Actually, what happened was I started falling apart socially, intellectually, and just within myself. I started literally falling apart, and I got really depressed because I didn't know what was wrong with me. I thought smoking pot was, you know, when I didn't have to study in undergrad, that was different, but now I had to study. It was in 2009 I started, well, I went to Jamaica and learned about medicine from Jamaicans. Their tradition in Jamaica is to take your finest bud, you know, the big top cola, and stick it in a bottle of rum. So when we had Pan-African slavery, this was all they had for medicine. And this big bottle of rum served as a year of medicine. I mean, they used it for everything, inflammation, gout, I mean, you just name it, they used it for everything. So I was like, why not try it? So I did. And my friends at Hopkins tried it too, and they were all writing papers, and they're like, this stuff's great, this is like Adderall. And I'm like, well, it makes me relax, you know? And then I developed this formulation while I was in grad school to the expense of my boss, who was like, are you selling drugs, really? But it's really, really interesting because it was non-psychoactive, so I could carry on with my day. I could be not tired. I could actually get really good sleep at night rather than sleeping during the day, which is my schedule naturally. So when I graduated, I started ThePotLab, and I know the name is like jarring, but I think it's a cute name. And I fell in love with growing again from when I was in high school. And I started off with the alcohol-based formulation, but I got so many parents of epileptic kids and kids on the spectrum who were like, alcohol is really harsh, like you gotta do something else. So we switched to oil base, and that helped out a lot. So what I found is that in grad school, I was around a lot of people on the spectrum, and there was a lot of intersectionalities with autism. These are the top 15. I took out gender dysphoria because that's a social thing, not a real thing. So that more has to do with the social constructs of society and expectations. So if you look at the top 15, we have anxiety, ADHD, bipolar, bowel disease. I think epilepsy got cut off there. Coordination disorders, inflammation, OCD, all of these things. I'm actually, oops, this is way off. I don't know why. I actually have 5 of these things, so I feel qualified to speak on them. And what I found is that in these extracts I was making, there was tons of THCA. Well, not really tons. In fact, there was very little, but it did all these great things, and it was non-psychotropic. It's also easily available in places like California or places where you can get MMJ, because most MMJ cannabis strains, they call them high THC, but they're actually high THCA until you smoke them or heat them. So THCA has been recently studied a lot to relieve inflammation, to protect the brain. to stop vomiting, which is a common nausea and vomiting, and other gastrointestinal disorders are common with autism. It's anti-cancer, they've found, especially for prostate cancer. And the weird thing is it has really low binding affinity, as we call it, for CB1 or CB2. So there's a possibility it's not even working through the classic cannabis pathways. The previous speaker actually mentioned what he called TRP channels. I call them Trp Channels. I actually studied them quite a bit at Johns Hopkins. And their interactions are also interesting because TRPV1 actually binds cannabinoids, but the other Trp channels, which are calcium channels, sodium channels, things that get neurofiring going, are actually heavily involved with CB1 and CB2. So I kind of mentioned this, but I always like to go over it. Where does THCA come from? It comes from the cannabis plant, and we harvest actually just the trichomes. We don't actually use whole plants, as they call it, because we weren't looking for all these proteins and things to be in our extract. We just use these little trichomes, and we have this blown up here. We actually use strains with a high THCA synthase to get lots of THC acid. And these are female flowers, of course. So once we do that, we get our extract and we dilute it to 4.6 mg per mil. And that's a weird number, right? So why we do that is because, well, I'm a little bit braver than most people. So I made this stuff and I was giving it out in California and we were having great feedback. A lot of people were saying great things, but we needed to expand our study nationally. So I picked up the phone and called the FDA. And I talked to somebody I knew from Hopkins, and they turned me over to somebody else. You know, there's a huge rank and file. And they said, at 0.46%, we're not going to worry about it. I said, okay, so we're going to do this nationally. So the data I'm going to show you today is actually national data. So that was exciting. And what we did was we subbed that alcohol out with mint, with mixed mint oils. These are non-wintergreen, so they're non-epileptic or non-epilepsy causing. And we used MCT mixed with hemp seed oil, and everyone's like, why hemp seed oil? Hemp seed oil is so rich with omegas, and it's such good brain food. So we definitely spike our MCT with that. We're actually veganic, so our cannabis is grown without bone and blood meal because it's laboratory grown. We really don't want bone and blood meal going around our lab. And then we dilute, of course, into a suspended base. And I think something that everyone should do is we sterile micropurify at 0.2 microns. That means no viruses, no bacteria, no molds, no spores are getting into it. And this is a highly reproducible formula because we're just diluting something, right? So we can go ahead and recreate this and recreate this. And we do our testing in triplicate often, and we post it live on our website. So here's our little bottle with the adapter syringe. The parents actually told me that's what they wanted, so I do whatever they want me to do. So in our study, we treated 9 cases of rare genetic disease, including NMDA encephalitis, or NMDA receptor encephalitis, excuse me, and Lou Gehrig's, not Lou Gehrig's, I'm sorry, LGS. Our average dose that we found was about 0.3 milliliters, and the average frequency came out to 3 times a day. This is an average daily intake of about 4 mgs. Our total respondents was 137, and while we had a majority that were under 18 and a majority female, it's kind of split 60-40. So this is really interesting because now we're covering a majority female population and a majority under 18 population. It gives us insights into sex differences, and treating 6.6% of our patients are rare genetic disease is kind of high. So this was going to be an interesting study, we knew from the get-go. So when we looked at we asked people what were they treating with Golden Earth MCT. The top 4 answers were actually seizure disorders. So they were able to report more than one thing. So a lot of this doesn't add up to 100, of course. And then the next thing was muscle spasms and tension, which I suffer from myself, and sometimes things will fly out of my hand, and it's really embarrassing. So that's the next one. And then followed by pain and inflammation. Autism spectrum, we had over 20% that were on the autism spectrum. Followed by clonic seizures, ADHD, OCD, cerebral palsy, and anxiety and depression, which I feel like this should be a lot higher. But a lot of us can't communicate. And so I feel like people who are on the spectrum who can communicate, this is kind of our job to take care of the others. So we're treating multiple spectra of intersecting health issues. So everyone wants to know what happened when they used Golden Earth. Well, we're happy to report we saw 60%, over 60% of our clients had improved communication skills. And then another about 60% actually improved physical activity, which includes improved coordination. And we're happy to report that most of them had no emotional changes when they started Golden Earth MCT. A lot of kids have rage issues, and you don't want to increase their emotionality. And then there's the other side of kids who are taking so many things that they're kind of droned out. So we're going to actually study that further this year in another study. So a majority saw these improvements. And then another thing that happened with Golden Earth MCT, which I was really happy as an activist, we got rid of 1 or more pharmaceutical drugs in almost every case. Actually, over 75% stopped 1 or more anti-seizure drugs. Over 30% stopped an antidepressant. About 20% stopped a muscle relaxer, and another 15% stopped sleeping pills. This hit another intersection for me because I was saving people lots of money because I know the price of those medicines. Kind of why my parents didn't get me a lot of Adderall and things like that. It's just really expensive, and sometimes improving people's finances actually can improve their life. So I was really happy to see that. I was really happy to see healthy kids. So we asked them how useful was Golden Earth because we wanted to see, thank you. We wanted to see if the people reporting to us were huge fans, and unfortunately they were, which kind of biases the report, but at the same time it gives us a place to improve our study. So most people said, over 80% said that it was the most useful or extremely useful thing they had tried. And then we had another small 15% say it was moderately useful. We really got no reports of it not being useful. And we really want to bring those people into our study so we know what's strong and what's weak. Because it's all about honesty for me in science. So we have another interesting study that we're working on. We had 63% of our patients report that they were using some or a little bit of CBD at some point with Golden Earth. And the clients that we had that didn't get any help from CBD or had very little help from CBD and wanted more help from cannabinoids, they were the ones that were more likely to report, and they were the more likely to be successful on Golden Earth MCT. The clients using CBD, we recommend to start at half our recommended dose because we do see sensitivity issues and some kind of interaction there, which is interesting because we're not really looking at the CB1, CB2 pathway when we look at THCA. However, there may be overlapping cellular mechanisms. So this is one of our babies before and after. The after didn't come out. So this is her before, and she has a whole plethora of things, including autism, and this is her after. She's so cute. So we have enough data to suggest that at least partially THCA is overlapping with the endocannabinoid system. And we wanted to know also reasons for choosing Golden Earth, like why are you looking for other things out there? And what was really scary is that most of these clients had tons of medical care and really, really good with their kids. They reported that nothing else worked. And I feel like in this day and age, there should be something that's actually working, but a majority said nothing else worked. And then another majority said that there were too many prescription drugs, and they were drawn to Golden Earth because it was non-psychotropic and a low dose for children. Giving them too much of anything is probably a bad thing. And then followed up by effectiveness, least side effects, organic and vegan. And then we need to work on, obviously, our ease of use because people aren't choosing it for that reason. So majority of our clients did choose Golden Earth because it was effective and non-psychoactive. And when we talk about effectiveness, usually there's side effects. But what we found was that there was a low chance of very mild and benign side effects, such as weight changes, so some weight gain, even though we did see a little bit of weight loss here. And we saw sleepiness and drowsiness. About 13% reported that, so it's worthy of noting that it can cause some drowsiness. And I've actually drank a whole bottle of it because why not? And I got sleepy and I went to bed and nothing else really happened, and I've had some interesting interactions with plants. So I didn't want to take long. I'm also on the spectrum, so I can't like focus for long. But I wanted to give you guys insights as to when to choose Golden Earth. We are no way the type of organization that says this is for everybody needs to do this. We're just like, this is kind of benign, so if you want to try it, like, let us know. So we always suggest that Golden Earth is tried when pharmaceuticals fail, and these are our testimonials. So when pharmaceuticals fail, there's lots of times things are given to kids that just aren't for them. There's a lot of things that aren't, well, for children, but there's also things that are harmful. So I have a client that had myoclonic seizures that were not able to be harnessed by classic pharmaceutical medications, and they saw significant control of their seizures. Another time that we suggest Golden Earth, it's when CBD products are either failing completely or they're giving, let's say, 50% of efficacy, and sometimes adding Golden Earth can bring it to 80%. However, we've had clients that have tried CBD for 8 months, and they used Golden Earth alone because they had the decrease in intensity and frequency of seizures. With it alone, they actually had more seizures together. So since the CBD wasn't doing anything, they just started using it alone. And this is an 8-year-old. So another time we say when it's complex coexisting conditions, so there's lots of stuff going on that are like neuroticism and anxiety, social anxiety, mixed with autism, cerebral palsy, or autism and epilepsy. I mean, just having these conditions makes you nervous constantly, I can say that. Also, we say when things are kind of benign and mixed up, it's actually a really good product. This person, they had a son with neurological storming, and he would stay up from 3 to 4 days just pacing and get angry and have aggression, and they actually started Golden Earth. Within a week, they saw none of these behaviors. So they've actually had the incident of no other medications working for this strange affliction, and THCA worked for them. So, and you can see the kind of drugs we're talking about are Depakote, phenobarbital, Ativan, clonidine, risperidone, and Ritalin. And I've actually published with the FDA on Depakote causing type 2 diabetes, so it's always alarming to me when I see Depakote and things like phenobarbital given to kids or even young people. So the last reason, I left my reason to be the last, when you want to foster independence, meaning your child maybe is a little nonverbal or not talking a lot, and you want to kind of open them up, or increase, physical activity, coordination, that really fosters independence for us, so that we don't have to be dependent on someone to speak for us or do things for us. And what we've seen is a lot of these stories of increased physical activity, like suddenly this kid's like going from sleeping 16 hours a day to running around 16 hours a day. And I kind of secretly get happy because some of them turn into real brats. And I'm like, yay! And they're just like pulling the dog's ears and running around. It's just great to see. But also mental stabilization, so stabilizing those emotions, whether it be rage or self-harm. We've seen a lot of attenuation of that. So to reiterate, our lab has seen 4 milligram THCA daily do lots of things without the psychotropic effects or severe side effects. THCA has had positive effects in treating autism and several coexisting conditions. Our clinical outcomes point to a regulatory effect as opposed to an inhibitor or activator effect. And I didn't go into all that science because that would be really boring. And we're continuing our research in looking at specific pharmaceutical drugs that can be discontinued, as well as interactions with CBD, THC, and other cannabinoids. And we're also going to expand our study to look at very specific interactions of very specific intersections where this low-dose THCA is really effective. One of the ones noted is the social anxiety and autism axis. So it's very interesting when we look at these intersections, how many actually really are starting to stand out to us. So we don't work for free, unfortunately. We don't have big government grants. We're not allowed. We work for ourselves, and we're all worker owners at ThePotLab. The talent in our lab is just boils over. We actually have come out with a rescue roller for Golden Earth, which is a reflexology applicator. Some of our parents put it on the palms of the feet for a seizure, and then on the temples for migraines. So that has been really interesting, and we have about 12 moms who forced me to make a roller ball, which I'm fine with that. We also make Veganicare, which is essential oils, herbal essential oils, and they're diluted for oral use. And the Tulsi ginger has been used for epilepsy and some autism conditions, especially dealing with the nerves, as well as the stomach, because ginger is so amazing for the stomach. We make for non-epileptics, and I love people on the spectrum actually love this because it's a botanical antiseptic that you can use as a deodorizer, that you can use for your body, and it doesn't smell really bad like some deodorants and things like that. So we do make some really mild healthcare stuff. Speaking of putting THCA on your body, we make 2 different formulations of 0.9% THCA. Again, people like to rub this on their joints for inflammation, so that's more of our study on arthritis. And we actually sell hemp seed MCT oil, just base, because we know a lot of people like to DIY, a lot of people like to grow themselves, and we found this base to be really great. It has essential fatty acid oils, and the omegas are actually balanced for the body. A lot of people don't know that hemp seed oil has the exact omega ratio that our bodies need. So, oh, I'm already to acknowledgements. Before I do that, I actually have brought some free samples of Golden Earth with me today. So if anyone wants to try it, we believe in try before you buy. We are not here to make money. We actually love our work and enjoy going to work every day. So I'm going to acknowledge the people that help me. Of course, I'm on the spectrum, so my family is really close to me. This is my dad. He just passed away, Vietnam veteran. He gave me so much strength. My mom, who is super loving and sweet, and my nieces. And this is my partner, also a professor. These are my family and my kids, some of the kids we work with. And this is my cat, my spirit animal, my therapy animal too. He's a new cat. His name is Liberation, and he's amazing. I wanted to thank Felicia Carvajal from the California Cannabis Advocates for inviting me, the California Minority Alliance, which is our cannabis group in California, and of course Hopkins, because they gave me so many chances to have a platform. And of course, my colleagues at Smart Farm Research Group and ThePotLab, who are amazing, creative people, and nobody looks like a scientist in my group. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to take them, and we have a sign-up sheet if you'd like any more info. We finally got it for sale on the internet. Yes. So we have an Etsy shop that's accessible through thepotlab.com, thepotlab.org. I realize I didn't put that on the slides. Again, because I just wanted to talk about how great this was, and I didn't really think about advertising. We had to fight with Amazon, but it's available on Amazon as well. And we'll probably be listing again on eBay. We just really didn't have lots of eBay orders. So, but Amazon and Etsy, I called the FDA and just asked them, like, can this ship? And they're like, no. Like, why wouldn't it? It's trace amounts. So even at 0.46, it's considered trace amounts. People pay us to take this once they try it and they see something. So basically, it's a release of liability once you pay us. And the NIH, I've been part of the NIH being, in science, and their thing is like, that's the best way almost, because you have them not only volunteering, but saying, here, I would pay to be in this, cohort. And there's a lot of times where people can't afford it. And so I showed you a picture of my daddy. My daddy is an old Black Panther, and what they did was that they always took care of their community, and we believe in that too. So we do have a voucher program for 30% off. And it's a regular thing. We issue a voucher number. They type it in. It's delivered to your house. You don't really have to jump through hoops, because we want to make it easy too. We know you have a lot of things going on. Oh, one more. Well, it was split in half, which is why I kind of just was like, well, most of them has no emotional changes, but so some of them saw a decrease in emotionality, and these were mostly kids with rage, kids that were self-harming, kids that were just all over the place. And then we had the other half of the emotional changes were more emotions. So there were some cases that the kids were a little more emotional, but it was kind of invited because they had been completely non-emotional before. So what's positive, a positive result for one person could be a bad result for another. So that's one of the questions that we have to really pay attention to, like what was the emotional change, what did it look like? So getting more detailed in our assessment is definitely what we'd like to do. From what we understand, it's so low that it's considered like a trace amount like any hemp product. It's not THC, which is another saving grace, and we've stabilized it all naturally. It takes a lot of heat, and once you would heat up one of our bottles, it would start fuming because the hemp seed oil has a very low vapor point. So it's not something you can put in a vape pen and get high off of. There's actually no possible way of getting high. There's one possible way of getting high on it, and I never tell anyone. You get a free sample by coming and seeing me, and I hand it to you. Oh, and then you have to sign up for our email list too. Wait, you, and then you, and then, that's how I saw it. So. No, it will say TPL Organics or Smart Farm Research Group. Absolutely not. That's how we got things stolen before. Mhm. Well, our recommended dose is based on not only age but weight, because we're working with lots of kids with different abilities, and some of them have stunted growth. So we always say go by weight. Um, the 30 mil, 1 ounce bottle, that lasts me 10 days because I'm a grown woman, and because I also use THC, which makes it's kind of a balancing act for me. Um, but for children, that bottle would last like a month, about, give or take. A children's dose is about 0.25 milliliters, so it's very, very, very little. And an adult dose is about 1 milliliter. So I take 3 milliliters a day myself. I do it morning, afternoon, evening, usually. And then it was you next, right? A lot of people ask that because some of the epilepsy drugs interact with CBD. So they give the epilepsy drug 2 hours before the CBD or vice versa. We haven't seen that. We've seen parents giving the epilepsy drugs, the golden earth, and everything together and having really good effects. Some others have give the CBD 2 hours later, so they give the golden earth with the CBD. Um, and then others say that they dose the CBD once a day because that's a longer lasting molecule. THCA has a really short half-life, we call it. So it's only in the system and available for 4 to 6 hours. So the good thing is if something bad happens or if it triggers something, it's only going to be a couple hours and it'll be out of the system. Yeah, and we used to say if you have epilepsy, probably start with CBD, but now we're seeing a lot of epilepsy kids that are just taking THCA. My only note on that is don't change too many things at once, especially on the spectrum. I get upset if my towel's in a different place, you know? So if I get something and it's different from what I've had before, I'm liable to be a little like irritated about it because I don't have epilepsy. But I'm very careful with the kids with epilepsy. I always say start at half the recommended dose, work your way up so you see something, and then get that stabilized before you switch and add CBD or take away a medicine. And when you do either of those things, do it one at a time, one thing a month. you know, just to not be so harsh. We're sensitive people. We don't have a booth. I came just to do this workshop and give you guys information. But I can add your name to the list, and we can send you over lots of information. Anyone else? Okay, thank you guys.